So the concept of Vinyasa Krama is one of the first concepts that we learn as effective yoga teachers to develop practices. So we need to be developing practices according to this principle of Vinyasa Krama. So V, particular specific placement of steps, right? And this goes back to our person purpose practice. If we know who our person is, all the different characteristics of who we're teaching, if we know what their purpose is, we know all the characteristics of their health issue or what it is they want yoga for, then we develop a practice that meets that person's needs and their conditions needs. And we go about teaching that. We sequence it, if you like, whether that's sequencing a single session or sequencing, 12 months worth of work together, in intelligent and carefully placed steps. So at its most simple, you don't go from, I have never done yoga before, to standing on your head or the Ashtanga secondary series in the same afternoon, right? That'd be crackers. You don't go from, I've never spoken a word of Spanish in my life, to, hey, let's, go and live in Spain in a place where nobody speaks any English and just, get a job and get on with it. I mean, that's just like, that's a big step to go from nowhere on the ladder to what you want to do, whether it's speaking Spanish or doing a headstand, to achieving that final goal. So in order to get from here to here, we need to take logical, well-sequenced steps. And those steps need to be in an intelligent order. So an example that I often use is the Vinyasa Krama of making a cup of tea, because I'm English and I drink a lot of tea. So the Vinyasa Krama of making a cup of tea for me, the way I do it, is I would fill the kettle with water and I put the kettle on to boil. I then get myself a mug and I get a tea bag and I put the tea bag in the mug. And then when the water is boiled, I pour the water into my teacup and my tea bag kind of swirls around. Maybe I'll squish it with a spoon. And then when there's enough tea out, I'll put some milk in and I watch. I put just the right amount of milk in, pull out my tea bag, put it in the compost. So that's the Vinyasa Krama, the steps to making a cup of tea. And as a result, I get yum tea just the way I want it, right? So maybe I want the cup of tea just like this, this particular color and strength and that amount of milk. But if I went about this by saying, okay, I'm going to put the cold water in the milk container, the carton, and then I'm going to put the dry tea bag in the kettle, and I'm going to boil the tea bag in the dry kettle and put the water in the milk carton, and then I'm going to put the whole lot together in my cup. And like, how is my tea going to be? Because I've done all the components. Like I've boiled the kettle. Yeah. I've put a tea bag in my cup. I've gotten the milk. I've gotten the water. Like all of those essential components are there. Kettle, boiled, milk, water, cup, tea bag. But what I've done is the stages, the steps that I've taken, like all of the ingredients were sound, but the steps that I've taken were illogical. So the outcome I get is rubbish, a cup of tea that you cannot drink, right? So the Vinyasa Krama of putting together a practice is going, okay, where are we now? Somebody who's never done yoga or somebody who wants a cup of tea. So where do we want to go? Well, I want to have the perfect cup of tea, or I want to be able to do a headstand. So how do I get from here to here? Well, I need to sequence those steps intelligently in a very specific way. And how specific those steps are is going to depend on the person and the purpose. Who am I teaching? And what am I teaching them for? We might get 3 steps in and go, actually, headstand is a terrible idea for this student, because when they came to me and said, I want to do headstand, I didn't realize that they had degeneration in their neck, or that maybe there's some other reason. They've got glaucoma, or they've got something in their health that is definitely not going to be helped by doing a headstand. And so we get to step 3 and we reappraise and we go, okay, so you've got glaucoma or you've got high blood pressure. Let's have a look at what practices might be helpful to support you to manage the symptoms of glaucoma, or to support the symptoms, support the management of the symptoms of high blood pressure. because that is now the purpose of the practice. So you might have thought on day one, the student comes in and says, teach me headstand. And by the time you started to do the preliminary work and got to know the person and understood what the purpose is, and you started with the baby steps, you figure out fairly early on that maybe like you're not heading where you thought you were going to head, and you end up doing something that is actually more appropriate and relevant and useful to that student. So those are the steps that we take. And that Vinyasa Krama that I've just described was the process that we've taken today in the asana practice, the way that we started from baseline and built. And it's what we did in that chanting practice. We'd already chanted Om Shanti Shanti 2 or 3 times before we got to that practice. And then we took it back to one Shanti at a time and built it up again. So we're taking one intelligent step after another to get you from, person who's done no yoga today and hasn't really chanted, to person who's ready to do all of those practices, including the chanting. Any questions?